Spine-chilling discovery. Estranged wife exposes sinister secrets behind husband's cursed death. Sarah felt the walls of their home tighten around her as the sun set, casting shadowy fingers through the kitchen window. The once comforting clatter of dishes had turned into a grim chorus, her son's absent laughter echoing like a sinister reminder. She gathered the scattering bills on the table, drowning under the weight of them, just like the dead leaves outside. With each passing moment, the whispers of the neighbors began to invade her space, stirring a terror in her gut. These were no longer friendly waves over white picket fences. They were cold eyes studying her every move, probing for answers, hinting at secrets she never wanted to uncover. Her fingers trembled as she brushed aside the pile, her heart racing with dread. It was then the soft knock jolted her from her thoughts. "Sarah, dear, it's Mrs. Jenkins." The voice held a sugary undertone, masking the sharpened edges lurking beneath. However, the way she lingered at the front door served as a warning. Sarah's gut twisted. The cozy suburb she had trusted now seemed to watch her with eager anticipation. What were they really after? The facade of the neighborhood melted away, revealing a spring of darkness. Nightfall wrapped around her, and with it came a surge of memories. Tommy was too young to know much about his father's demons, but the shivers on Sarah's skin told her that digging into her husband's past wouldn't lead her away from danger, it would lead her closer to it. The friends he once had were now shadows, men cloaked in grim secrets. They had greeted her with half-smiles, dodging questions, their hushed tones laced with warnings that made her skin crawl. She began to glimpse the sinister truth each secret they guarded clumped around them like thick fog, cloaking the innocent veneer of their neighborhood. The urgency to understand pulled at her. Late one night, she uncovered a hidden box in Michael's study, full of faded recordings. Each tape played his frantic voice, carrying whispers of dread. "They're here, Sarah. They're all around us." He had breathed into the microphone, desperation clawing at his tone. The recordings spoke of things that went bump in the night, shadows that roamed in search of the desperate like her. Her heart thudded as she processed his notes, scrawled in a shaky hand, warning her about forces that preyed on the vulnerable to maintain their grip on power. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Panic surged within her as the familiar streets warped under the weight of knowledge. Those white picket houses loomed closer, their once comforting structures now a cage. Dusty shadows crept under streetlights, their eyes glinting with malevolence. With every click of the tape, she conjured images of people she had waved to, their smiles now sinister masks hiding behind laughter. She was ensnared in a web spun with deceit. As Sarah clutched the tapes, she knew she was in deeper than she'd ever wanted. It wasn't just about uncovering the truth anymore, it was about survival. With Tommy unaware, blissfully innocent, she felt the heaviness of his life resting squarely on her shoulders. Then a spike of terror crashed through her. Someone was watching her. The shadows clouding her vision thickened, and a figure stepped out from the darkness. A man she barely recognized from Michael's past. His smile punctuated with something far more sinister. Her heart raced. The shadows pressed against her like fingers curling into her soul. As screams threatened to claw from her throat, she found herself lost in the choking haze of a haunting legend that threatened to consume her suburban home. The darkness swallowed her, each whisper echoing into the night like smoke, lingering with an unbearable weight. What secrets lay ahead? The air turned thick as the man stepped closer, his features twisting into something grotesque as Sarah tried to focus. Panic surged again, each heartbeat drumming louder in her ears. She wanted to scream, to flee, but her body felt anchored to the floor, lodged in the fear that paralyzed her. Sarah, his voice was smooth, almost hypnotic. "You really shouldn't delve into things you don't understand." The way he said her name sent a chill down her spine, something dark whispering behind it. She shifted sideways, her eyes searching for an escape, a potential exit. But the shadowed interior of her house felt like a labyrinth, turning against her with every minute. "Who are you?" Her voice sounded weak, trembling like a candle flame in the wind. "I'm a friend," he replied with a smile that looked too wide, too sharp. "I think you've been misled, dear Sarah. There are things you don't know about Michael, about us." The last two words came out like a trigger. The memory of Michael's frantic recordings flooded her mind. The fear clawed harder at her insides. "What do you know?" "More than you would believe," he said, inching closer still, the shadows dancing like specters around him. "You should watch your son closely. Sarah, a family can be a dangerous place." All the voices from the tapes looped in her mind. They spoke of shadows lurking, of people shifting, of unseen forces at work. The house groaned as if it was listening, the walls wrapping tighter with each word. "What do you want?" She took a step back, adrenaline spiking her senses. "Oh, you know the answer to that." He leaned in, whispering the same thing everyone wants. "Control. Power. It's all around you." A flick of movement caught her eye, and she turned to see the shadows shifting behind him, dark figures moving like fragments of her worst fears. The hushed whispers of the neighborhood felt louder now, an accusing tide washing over her in pure instinct. She lunged for the stairway, her heart hammering as she raced upward. The wooden steps creaked dangerously under her weight, each sound echoing her urgency. She could hear him trailing behind, growing closer. "Running 1T save you, Sarah," he yelled, amusement dripping from his voice. "You can't escape what's already been set in motion." At the top, she barreled into Tommy's room, locking the door behind her. She spun around, chest heaving, and pressed her back against the door. Her mind raced. She needed a plan, some means of escape. "Mom?" Tommy's voice broke the tension, his little hands rubbing sleep from his eyes, oblivious to the danger looming just beyond the door. "Stay in bed, honey," she managed, forcing a calming tone. "I need you to stay quiet." She listened intently, straining to hear any sign of him outside. The silence grew heavy, every second stretching painfully. What if he would just walk through? Should she call for help? The tight coil of desperation wrapped around her. But the house pulsed with a lurking dread. The way it had felt earlier crept back in, every shadow holding a secret. Just as a bead of sweat trickled down her spine, she heard a whisper seeping through the door, smooth and haunting. "You can't hide forever, Sarah. The truth will find you." The weight of those words slipped through her, making her stomach churn. Was she already too late? What had Michael gotten himself and her into? Outside the door, silence fell heavy, but she could still sense him. The threat loomed, a darkness just out of sight. Her hand trembled as she reached for her phone, eyes darting between the door and her son. What could she really do against that kind of power? The answer was looming, more terrifying than the shadows that threatened from outside. In that moment of paralysis, it became clear she had to flee. But could she escape the pull of the truth? With her heart pounding in her ears, the urgency clawed at her to act. Just as she began to strategize the next move, the door rattled, a weight crashing against it, the sound reverberating like a gunshot in the eerie quietness. "Mom!" Tommy screamed, his innocence piercing through the horror. And that was the moment she had to decide. Would she let the shadows consume her, or would she face the darkness head-on? Panic drew near, as the door bucked again. Time was running out, and she was about to uncover just how deep the darkness ran. What was waiting for her on the other side? The door shuddered violently, splintering with groaning beneath the force. Each bang felt like a countdown. Sarah could hear her heart pounding hard against her ribs, every beat a desperate plea for survival. "Mom!" Tommy's voice trembled, full of fear. "Shoo!" she hissed, trying to mask her own panic. Her mind raced. She needed to think. The window. It was her only way out, but could she really risk it? The door buckled again, and her resolve nearly shattered with it. She turned, dim light spilling in from outside. It wasn't an escape. It was a trap. The ground below was hard, unforgiving. What if she fell? What if that man's taunting voice echoed again in her mind, chipping away at her will? You can't escape what's already been set in motion. No, she whispered to herself, trying to drown it out. The thought of the shadows creeping through the house, pursuing her with cruel intent, ignited a surge of adrenaline. She turned back to Tommy, who still stood bewildered on his bed. "Tommy, listen to me," she said, kneeling to meet his wide, innocent eyes. "You have to stay quiet and do exactly as I say. We're going to get out of here, now." The door shook once more, splinters flying as it buckled like it was about to cave in. Sarah's breath hitched. The doom lurking outside was festered with intent, and she feared she was the cause of it. As she reached for the window latch, the pain of moving felt like dragging her limbs through thick mud. With a sharp click, the window swung open, the chill of the night rushing in. She peered down. It was a long drop, but in that moment, she felt like it was a better alternative than facing whatever horror awaited her. She had to believe that. "Climb down," she whispered urgently, hurrying Tommy to the window. The moment felt surreal, each tick of time draining the last of her strength as they dared to leap into the unknown. "Mom, I don't want to," Tommy protested, panic in his voice. "It's okay, buddy," she soothed, forcing her fear down. "I've got you." Just as she prepared to hoist him through, the door exploded inwards, splinters flying like shrapnel. The man stood in the doorway, dark and menacing, a wicked grin painted across his face, impossibly wide. "Did you really think you could escape?" he asked, his voice echoing with an eerie calmness that dripped with malice. Her instincts kicked in. "Tommy, jump!" As she pushed him through, she bolted toward the door, blocking his path. "You're not getting in here," she shouted, adrenaline rushing. The man laughed, low and menacing, pushing against her. They collided, a monstrous force against her frail frame, and she felt herself stumbling back, the very essence of her being scraping against the walls of impending doom. Behind her, she could hear the glass shatter as Tommy hit the ground. She turned, meeting the darkness with her own defiance, only to be grasped by cold fingers wrapping around her arm, pulling her dangerously close. "Stay with me, Sarah." He leaned in, and she could see the grotesque distortion of his features twisting further, shadow pooling behind him. "Your son is safe for now." The words coiled around her, heavy and suffocating. "What do you want from us?" she gasped, a raw edge to her voice. He smiled wider, showing teeth that seemed too sharp, too wrong. "Everything." The shadows seemed to swell around him, slipping into her heart, wrapping around her throat, threatening to crush her. Her world blurred, the horrifying images of ghosts and darkness swirling, threatening to pull her in. With a final burst of courage, she wrestled against his grip, clawing at the shadows as they curled closer. "I want to let you take him," but the very walls seemed to close in, echoing her despair. The air turned bitter, stinging her lungs. "Then try," he replied with unerring calmness. "But the truth will find you, Sarah." In that moment, she knew the battle had only just begun, fear clashing with the resolve to protect her son. A horrible rush of realization surged within her. There was more to this than she had ever understood, more than Michael had recorded, more than she was ready for. As the shadows moved closer, their palpable dread clinging to her skin, she whispered a promise to her son. Would she find a way to uncover the truth, or would darkness finally claim them both? The escape she so desperately sought was now a tightening vice around her throat, the truth lurking just beyond her grasp. What would she discover, trapped in that web of terror? Time felt like a fading candle flickering in the night. The shadows shifted, and the eviction tremor of something worse began to surface. What sinister secrets awaited her as the truth came crashing down? The darkness around Sarah seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting with each jagged pulse of fear in her chest. She twisted in the man's grip, desperate to break free. His cold breath whispered against her ear, sending shivers down her spine. "You think you can defy me?" he taunted, a sinister smile crawling across his grotesque face. The shadows enveloped him, gnawing at her vision, lending him an even more twisted appearance, as if he were a shifting entity molded by nightmares. Suddenly, she caught a glimpse of Tommy out of the corner of her eye. He stumbled backward, his wide eyes reflecting horror as he watched from the ground below a living, breathing reminder of the stakes at play. Panic clawed at her insides. She had to protect him. "Tommy!" she screamed, frantically twisting against his hold. The man simply chuckled, a sound chilling enough to pull the heat from her body. "Let him go," she pleaded, her voice steely with defiance. "You can't do this." "Oh, but I can," he replied, drawing nearer, the shadows whispering sweetly in her ears, taunting her. "Your son. He's just the beginning, Sarah. You're much more valuable than you realize." What did he mean? The questions raced through her mind in a dizzying whirl. She felt her stomach tighten. Lurking fears began to weave a story of their own. Could he know about Michael's secrets? The man dragged her closer. She struggled, flailing against his inhuman grip, but it felt like fighting against an iron wall. Memories of her husband flashed through her mind, the hushed conversations, the late nights poring over his notes. Suddenly, she wondered if Michael's obsession with the paranormal had put them all in danger. "Is this what Michael wanted?" She spat, anger igniting hope within her. "Did he bring you here?" He smirked, his expression blending annoyance with amusement. "Your husband? Oh, he knew all right, and it cost him dearly." Her heart plummeted. Michael had been chasing the truth, but this truth was not one she could understand. It was more than mortality. It was dark and carnivorous. Tommy backed away, the street's concrete looming behind him like a barrier. He was searching for a way back inside, a shred of security, but it was clear that there was no safe haven now. The door frame splintered, a shuddering crack that echoed through the night. Sarah stole a glance at where the door had once stood, and just behind it flickered movement, more figures, shadows pooling, pulsing like a bloodthirsty tide. The man tightened his grasp, sensing her hesitation. "Leave him out of this," Sarah shouted, her voice breaking against the looming reality. If she were to lose Tommy, if there was a chance she could save him, she had to act. She drove her knee into his shin, breaking the momentary hold he had over her. With a sudden twist, she freed herself, launching toward the window. She could see the reflection of the night, dark and shimmering, as she leaped through the frame with reckless abandon. She landed hard, the breath knocked from her lungs, but adrenaline surged through her veins. "Mom!" Tommy's voice screamed out. She grabbed his hand, fingers curling tightly around his trembling palm. "Run!" she yelled. The shadows that had seemed to curl around her now raced toward them, drawn by the commotion. They tore down the street, heartbeats synchronized in their flight, fear rippling behind them like a living shadow. She felt the weight of dread whispering warnings in her ear. Where could they go? Suddenly, Tommy tugged at her sleeve, his face pale. "What is happening, Mom? What does he want?" Her mind raced, but the only answer was a hollow truth. "I don't know, but we can't stop. We have to find out." As they barreled into the darkness, the shadows clawed at their heels, living nightmares that sought to reclaim what had been chased away. Behind them, she heard the man's laughter, chilling and filled with authority. "You can run, but the truth, it will find you." What lay ahead was uncertain, but their intertwining fates danced dangerously close to a revelation that could unravel everything. Where would their desperate escape lead them next? And what truths waited in the shadows? They dashed through the dimly lit street, the echo of their footsteps swallowed by the night. The air was thick and oppressive, nearly suffocating. Sarah looked at Tommy, his small face pale and drawn, eyes filled with fear. What did he mean? He whispered, trembling as they turned a corner, seeking a hiding place. "How could Dad know him? What I don't know could fill a library." "Sweetheart," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "But we can't focus on that now. We have to keep moving." They slipped into an alley, the brick walls closing in around them. Shadows danced in the corners, each one a reminder of the darkness pursuing them. Felt like being hunted. Sarah pressed her back against the cool, hard surface, taking slow, shallow breaths. The adrenaline surged, begging her to flee again, to run until there were no shadows left to haunt them. But where would they go? What would they do? They heard it before they saw it, a rustle, a whisper echoing through the alley. Sarah's heart raced. She crouched low, pulling Tommy down with her. His wide eyes searched hers, confusion mingling with terror. They listened, breaths held tight. The man's laughter still rang in her ears, taunting them like a cruel symphony. Was he already toying with them? The air shifted. It felt alive, charged with an energy that made her skin crawl. "Mom, I'm scared." Tommy's voice wavered. I know, she whispered, gripping his hand tighter, feeling his pulse racing just like hers. "We're going to be okay." But deep down, she didn't believe it. As if answering her fears, the shadows at the end of the alley thickened. They twitched, pulled tight like a noose, and a figure emerged, cloaked in darkness. It was another man, his features hidden, though his presence screamed danger. He stepped forward slowly, the shadows writhing around him as if alive. "Where do you think you're going, Sarah?" he sneered, voice slithering through the alley like smoke. "Who are you?" Sarah bit back, fingers tightening around Tommy's. "What do you want?" "Oh, sweet girl," he said, voice dripping with mockery. "You still don't understand." The first man had spoken about secrets, and now this one seemed to thrive on mysteries. Fear prickled at Sarah's senses. It wasn't just her life that hung in the balance. Tommy could feel it too, the dread heavy in the air, the cold whisper of danger creeping closer. Your husband sought knowledge, but he never imagined the price. The man stepped closer, shadows swirling like hungry beasts. And now you're bound to pay it. Tommy shifted beside her, a whimper escaping his lips. Panic clawed at Sarah's mind. She couldn't let him see her fear. The alley felt devouring, like it wished nothing more than to pull them into its suffocating embrace. "Leave us alone." Her voice broke out, filled with raw desperation. "You have no power over us." "Ah, but I do." He drifted even closer, eyes glinting with malevolent delight. "You're just as curious as your husband was. And therein lies your downfall." A voice cried out from the street beyond, surging footsteps, angry shouts. Sarah felt hope flickering in her chest. Help might be near. But before she could react, the cloaked figure laughed, sharp and biting. "You think they can save you? They'll join you in an abyss far darker than the one you're in now." And with that, he raised a hand, shadows twisting into claws that lunged toward them. "Run!" Sarah screamed, yanking Tommy to his feet, the darkness closing in like a tightening vice. They sprinted down the alley, desperate for any light in the oppressive gloom. But as they reached the street, Sarah hesitated, almost stumbling. Dead ends loomed, monstrous and unforgiving. They were trapped, and behind them, a laughter, 1,000 voices whispering secrets dancing in the dark. "Maybe it's time to find out what your husband discovered, Sarah," the man's voice taunted from the shadows. "After all, the truth can be as perilous as the lies. Where could they escape from a truth that wanted to consume them whole?" Their footsteps echoed like thunder in the silence, but Sarah's heart thudded louder, each beat a warning. She glanced back at Tommy, who was lagging behind, eyes wide with terror. "Stay close," she urged, urging him forward as they burst onto the main road. The streetlights flickered, casting long, eerie shadows as a heavy fog rolled in, blanketing the ground. An unseen force seemed to pull at her, a whisper echoing her husband's name, drawing her to unknown horrors. "Where do we go now?" Tommy gasped, panting beside her. "I don't know," Sarah admitted, fear tightening her throat. She looked around, scanning for safety. A flicker of hope caught her eye, a diner, its neon sign buzzing defiantly against the dark. "There. We can hide inside." They raced toward it, urgency driving them. The diner's door creaked ominously as they pushed inside, the smell of stale coffee and grease overwhelming. A few patrons looked up, their faces drawn and shadowed, whispering among themselves. Sarah caught fragments of their conversations. "Did you see that? Shadows moving." "The man in black, Mom. They look scared. Tommy whispered, clinging to her side. Stay low. We're not safe yet, Sarah said, keeping a tight grip on his hand as they slipped into the booth at the back. The humming fluorescent lights overhead flickered, creating a disorienting rhythm that hammered her nerves. They huddled close, hearts racing in unison. What if he finds us? Tommy asked, panic rising in his voice. He won tea, Sarah said fiercely, though her own resolve wavered. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the door as it swung open. Wind whipped through the diner, carrying with it a cold dread. The figure from the alley loomed in the entrance, silhouetted by the night. Murmurs erupted among the patrons, their faces blanching as they shrank back into their seats. Nice place you have here, the man drawled, stepping inside, shadows swirling around him like a sinister cloak. But these walls won't keep you safe, Sarah. Truth is a relentless hunter. The clattering of cutlery ceased. It was a moment wrapped in heavy silence. Fearful eyes darted between Sarah and the man, caught between the horror and the messy comfort of reality. The waitstaff stood frozen, paralyzed by the dark presence that invaded their space. Leave us alone, Sarah shouted, adrenaline fueling her courage. The authority of her voice felt hollow even as it echoed through the diner, met with a hush. Alone? He echoed, moving toward them, the shadows trailing lightly behind him. You'll never be alone again. The truth binds you. He paused, a sinister grin spreading across his face. Are you ready to learn what he discovered? Tommy gasped, burying his face into Sarah's side. She could feel his small body trembling. The man took another step, the low hum of darkness thickening around them. You think you can outrun your fate? The waitress dropped a cup. The shatter echoed like thunder, breaking the spell cast on the room. Sarah stood, instincts kicking in. We're getting out of here, she yelled. She grabbed Tommy's hand, dragging him upright. They bolted for the back exit, the man's laughter trailing behind them like the death knell. You think you can escape? It's too late for that. The door flew open and they stumbled outside, cold air biting at their skin. The streets were murky, shadows blooming like ominous flowers. Sarah turned, scanning desperately for a way to flee. A nearby fire alley flickered with the promise of light, but a tangled web of dread tied her stomach in knots. Which way, Mom? Tommy's voice trembled, eyes wide. Anywhere but here, she shouted, pulling him toward the flickering glow ahead. But shadows slithered closer, tendrils whispering deadly secrets. The realization hit her hard. No matter where they ran, the truth was hunting them down. If you love your son, you'll uncover what he hid. The man's voice echoed from the shadows, laced with a terrible finality as they reached the edge of the alley. A sudden flash of memories crashed over Sarah, her husband's last days. His fragmented notes, hints of something he never brought home. A chill ran down her spine. What had he stumbled upon? And who was this figure chasing them, lingering like a ghost? A scream erupted behind them, shattering the fragile air. Sarah turned, heart pounding wildly. Mom, please, Tommy cried. The edge of revelation beckoned. Would she dare uncover the darkness tied to her family? As they plunged into the dark, a chilling question hung in the air. What if the truth was a monster far worse than the shadows pursuing them? Their feet pounded on cracked pavement, the alley narrowing around them like a mole ready to swallow them whole. The flickering light ahead grew brighter, but the shadow behind them surged with a life of its own. Mom, hurry, Tommy yelled, fear clutching his voice. Sarah didn't need to turn to know the man in black was gaining. An icy chill swept through the alley, causing her to stumble. The raw panic in Tommy's eyes drew her forward, sheer will propelling them. They rounded the corner, skidding to a halt in front of the wall of light. It was a wide street, bare except for an old gas station glowing like a beacon of hope. Its rusty sign creaked in the wind, yet Sarah could hardly breathe as the compelling urge to hide overwhelmed her. Stay close, she urged Tommy as they sprinted toward the gas station, relieved to be free of the alley's grasp. They burst through the door, the tiny bell tinkling a warning. The interior smelled like stale gasoline and tobacco. An old man leaned against the counter, disheveled but alive with curiosity. He looked up, his tired eyes wide with surprise. "Whoa, what's wrong with you folks?" he asked, yet the warmth in his voice didn't reach Sarah's heart. "Please, we need help," she exclaimed, chest heaving. Frantic, she glanced over her shoulder. The shadows were gone, but the feeling of dread clung to her like a second skin. "You two all right?" the attendant asked, exchanging a concerned look with Tommy. The boy's face was pale, lips trembling as he skipped steps toward the old man, as if seeking solace in a stranger. "Did you see anyone?" Someone, Sarah stammered, trying to catch her breath. "A man in black?" "Can't say I have," the attendant said, shifting uneasily. "But this neighborhood isn't what it used to be. You best keep your heads down. Folks never come back after they go into the night like that." Night like that. The old man's words festered in her mind, dredging up memories, dark, gnawing memories. The last days of her husband, his fractured sanity leading him to narrow paths of thought she couldn't follow. Maybe he knew more. Had he been hunted, too? "Mom, we should go," Tommy said quietly, his small hand gripping hers like a vice. "Not yet. We need to stay under the radar." The tension in her voice surprised even her, but she couldn't shake the discomfort in her gut. Suddenly, the door jingled violently, and Sarah spun around. The bell's ring swallowed her breath. It was him. The man in black strolled in, a predatory smile slicing through the dim light. "Did you miss me?" he drawled, each word dripping with menace. Tommy clutched Sarah's side, both of them frozen as the world darkened around them again. She knew they had to move. They couldn't let him trap them here, not now. "Make a break for the back," Sarah hissed, not breaking her gaze from the man. Instinctively, she dragged Tommy toward the stockroom where boxes and crates blocked their path. "Run," they both shouted together, tumbling through the clutter. The world outside faded, but trouble found them nonetheless. The man's laughter followed, chilling and mocking. "You can't hide forever, Sarah. You'll only prolong the inevitable." Their hearts raced as they squeezed between shelves, but no matter how quickly they maneuvered, they could feel him breathing down their necks. Each step felt heavier, the darkness creeping closer, revealing the truth she dreaded. Suddenly, Tommy stumbled, falling to the floor with a cry. "Mom!" Sarah spun around, panic erupting in her chest. She grabbed her son, pulling him upright. But in the chaotic dance of shadows and shelves, she caught sight of something glinting on the ground, a crumpled note with her husband's handwriting. "Tommy, wait," she whispered fiercely, but it was too late. The man in black stepped into view, cold eyes glimmering with malice. He leaned down, teasingly close to Tommy. "And here I thought we had all the time in the world. Ready to find out what your father really did?" That question hung in the air like a noose. What had her husband uncovered? "Mom, I'm scared." Tommy's voice trembled. "Hold on tight, buddy. We'll figure this out together," she replied, rising against fear that clawed at her heart. But the shadows were already swallowing them. As they bolted back through the door, the weight of the truth crashed down on Sarah. Did she dare face the monster that prowled on the edges of her memory? The answer lurked just ahead, waiting to expose everything. The gas station's fluorescent lights buzzed harshly, illuminating the chaos in stark, flickering detail. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she pushed through the cluttered stockroom, the thud of Tommy's small feet echoing behind her. A sharp cry pierced her thoughts, and she turned, frantically scanning the dim room for her son. "Tommy!" The boy was crouched, eyes wide as he pointed at the note on the ground. "Mom, look!" His voice was a fragile thread. In that moment, with dread crawling like vines over her skin, she bent down to snatch the crumpled paper from the floor. The handwriting was unmistakable, her husband's familiar loops and sprawling letters. But the words were cryptic, barely legible. A frantic scrawl she hadn't seen since the day everything fell apart. "Find the key before the darkness consumes," she read aloud, her breath hitching. With every syllable, the air felt heavier, like a storm brewing just out of sight. "What does this mean?" "We can't stay here," Tommy whispered, urging her to stand. Yes, coming. The laughter echoed from outside like a mournful song, sinister and full of glee. Sarah felt the walls closing in, and that omnipresent chill wrapped around them, washing away the resilience she tried so hard to maintain. Come on, she hissed, pulling him along, the note clenched tight in her hand. They stumbled backwards through the mess, adrenaline coursing through their veins. As they pushed past the shelves, the weight of something ungraspable settled in the pit of her stomach. Mom, the door. Tommy pointed frantically toward the back exit. A heavy thud echoed against it, leaving cracks of light where it shuddered from the impact. Before they reached it, the man in black appeared, his smile painted wide, darkness radiating from him. You really shouldn't have run, Sarah, he crooned. It only makes this more fun. Tommy, run, she shouted, vaulting over a stack of boxes. They dashed for the door, but she could feel the darkness pooling behind them, slithering closer. The man's shadow stretched impossibly long as if trying to grasp them with a final push. She slammed her shoulder against the door, bursting into the cool night air. The gas station stood behind them like a skeletal sentinel, its flickering sign a faint heartbeat. Then, her breath caught as she saw the street flood with moonlight, revealing chaotic figures littered across the asphalt. Each one seemed caught in the web of shadows, eyes wide with dread, mouths agape in silent screams. Mom, what is happening? Tommy asked, his voice small and fearful. I don't know, but we need to find shelter, she shouted back, pulling him down the street. But the realization crashed over her. These were the souls lost to the night. Shadows of people who had been here before. Ahead, a door loomed, an old bar, its windows dark but promising safety. She could hear the distant echo of piano music mixed with faint whispers, an invitation and a warning all at once. Mom, I don't want to go in there. Tommy pressed against her side, every muscle in his small frame trembling. Just trust me, Sarah urged, dragging him forward. They stepped onto the threshold, and the air inside felt electric, thick with secrets. The door creaked as it closed behind them, and the atmosphere shifted. The whispers grew louder, resonating with the chilling promise of what lay ahead. Before they could collect themselves, a voice cut through the haze. You're lost just like the rest of us. A figure emerged from the shadows, eyes glinting with recognition and terror. Who are you? Sarah's voice trembled, her heart racing. Someone who knows what you're dealing with, the figure said, stepping closer. And I can help you if you're willing to pay the price. Before she could respond, a loud crash resounded from outside, a shattering of glass echoing through the bar. Then, the man in black's voice filled the air, charging with wrath. You thought you could escape me? Sarah froze, the weight of the truth pressing down cruelly. She realized they were not just facing the man in black. They were standing at the threshold of nightmares, mysteries tangled around her husband's death, wrapping tighter around them. Mom! Tommy cried out, terror creeping back into his voice. But before she could reassure him, the figure in the bar grinned knowingly, a sinister spark in their eyes. The truth is darker than you think, Sarah. The key lies deeper than you know, and there, on the cusp of revelation, the shadows surged as the door shuddered again. Would they uncover the truth or become just another whisper in the night? The figure stepped closer, their features shifting in the flickering bar light, shadows dancing across their face. You're about to wish you never entered, they whispered, their voice dripping with sinister mirth. Sarah's heartbeat quickened, the warning resonating with every corner of her mind. Who are you? She repeated, more urgently now, clutching Tommy's hand tightly as they both backed away slightly, putting distance between themselves and this stranger. Names are irrelevant in places like this, the figure replied, their grin widening, revealing teeth that seemed almost too sharp. Call me Echo. I was just like you, drawn in by curiosity, by the need to understand. They paused, glancing towards the door as if anticipating the dark figure beyond. But you have to know what you are dealing with when you seek the truth. Tommy, stay close to me, Sarah murmured, her eyes darting back to the door. The thuds of the man in black echoed menacingly, and with every knock, The bar seemed to tremble around them. "Mom, I can feel him," Tommy whispered, his small body trembling against hers. Tears shimmered in his wide eyes, reflecting the dim lights. "Not yet. Not yet," Sarah whispered fiercely, trying to hold onto her own composure while dread clawed at her insides. "We need to find the key." "The note, do you really think the key can help you?" Echo interrupted, their tone suddenly cold and mocking. "I've seen people like you go to extraordinary lengths for a sliver of hope, all to discover there's a darker price attached. Your husband's death is a wound that runs deep. It might open doors you never meant to pry into." A glass shattered somewhere in the distance, the sound sharp enough to break the mounting tension inside the bar. Sarah looked at Echo, their unyielding gaze unwavering, and for a moment, she felt the pull of despair. Was there any safety left to be found? But then, a sudden clarity slammed into her. She needed to uncover the truth. "What do you know about him?" she demanded, her voice steadier. "My husband." Echo's smile faded, replaced by a grim understanding. He just lost. He was taken. The shadows you see out there are not mere byproducts of darkness. They are echoes of lives consumed, like the one you seek. If you want answers, Sarah, you have to be willing to plunge deeper, to confront the darkness that took him. Before Sarah could respond, the door rattled violently, and an inhuman growl emanated from behind it. "Time is not on your side," Echo warned, their voice low. "I'll do whatever it takes," Sarah said, her voice an echo of determination, cutting through the rising fear. "Tell me what I need to do." "Well then," Echo said, stepping back and gesturing toward the bar's dimly lit interior. "If you want the key, you have to find it first. But beware, others seek it too, and they don't come with good intentions." "What do you mean?" Tommy asked, still instinctively pressing against his mother's side. "Consider us all pieces in a game," Echo explained, their smile returning, darker but somehow inviting. "The truth can set you free, but it may also bind you. Are you ready? Because shadows grow impatient." Suddenly, the roof above them began to creak ominously, as if the very building itself were held together by the secrets it harbored. Shadows began to bloom in every corner, stretching closer, as if alive. Sarah felt the air around her thicken and knew the time for hesitation was over. "Lead us to it, I'm ready," she declared fiercely, clenching Tommy's hand as determination surged through her. Just as Echo turned, a sinister laugh filled the air outside. "Are you really ready to uncover the truth?" The voice of the man in black taunted, sending chills down her spine. "The game has only just begun." And then the shadows surged forward. Would they find the key? Or would it pull them deeper into a nightmare they couldn't escape? The fog settled thick around Sarah and Tommy as if the night itself had come to swallow them. With determination etched into her features, Sarah pulled her son close, preparing to plunge deeper into the bar's recesses. Echo led the way, slipping through the murky shadows that clung to the walls like sin, guiding them deeper into a space cluttered with secrets. "Stay connected," Echo murmured, glancing back to ensure they remained close. "The darkness here has its own will. If you become lost, you may never find each other again." The bar's atmosphere pulsed like a living entity, flickering overhead lights flickering like warning signals. Sarah felt vulnerability seep into her bones, the hope of finding answers entwined with fear. "What do we do now?" Tommy asked, his voice a fragile whisper. "Be brave. Find the key," Sarah whispered back, squeezing his hand tighter. Echo led them to a doorway half hidden by shadows. "Remember, sometimes you have to confront what you fear to find what you seek." With a deep breath, they stepped into the narrow corridor lined with old photographs, faces trapped in time, eyes glinting with lost stories. It felt like walking through history, secrets whispering from the walls. Sarah felt the weight of each gaze, heard the unsettling promises wrapped in their silence. Suddenly, a shadow darted across the far end of the hallway, followed by an echoing laugh that sent chills prickling down their spines. "Come to play, have you?" It was that sinister voice. "Don't look back," Echo urged, voice steady but urgent. Face set with resolve, Sarah picked up the pace. They stepped into a dim room at the end of the corridor, a dusty old game room, cluttered with forgotten artifacts. There it is, Echo gestured to a pedestal in the center. It glimmered faintly, a small ornate key resting atop, but before they could reach it, the shadows shifted violently. "No!" Tommy cried, trying to pull away, but Sarah held his hand firm. "Stay close, sweetheart." And the man in black emerged from the swirling darkness, swift and elegant. "You play such dangerous games, Sarah." His smile sent terror clawing up her spine. "You're the one who brought us here." She snapped back, defiance lifting her chin. "What do you want?" "Everything you wish to uncover. The truth is worth the price of a life." Before she could respond, a sudden rush of darkness swirled around Tommy, who gasped sharply. "Mom!" Without thinking, Sarah surged forward, her heart racing as she pushed past the shadows to shield him. But they were everywhere, wrapping tightly around her, pulling and choking. "Let him go!" Sarah shrieked, her voice breaking, filled with raw power and desperation. The man laughed, but before he could retaliate, Echo moved between them, steady and calm. "You need to stop. The key is within your reach. Focus on it." "Mom!" Tommy's cries faded, pulling her focus as fear flooded her senses. This was the moment. Sarah stepped boldly toward the pedestal, reaching for the key with trembling fingers. The shadows shrieked, twisting, pressing in as if to crush her resolve. "Quickly!" Echo urged, keeping the man at bay with an imperceptible force. "You have to unlock his grip on you." With a desperate breath, Sarah snatched the key. In that instant, the darkness shrieked, recoiling from her grasp, and she felt a surge of strength. The shadows thinned, refracting the man's furious glare. "I won't let you take him," she shouted, brandishing the key like a weapon. "Foolish girl," he hissed, eyes narrowing dangerously. "You cannot fight that which has already been set in motion." Yet the key pulsed with warmth in her palm. "I'm not afraid," she declared, feeling the courage seep through her like a flow of light. She turned toward Tommy. Limpid hope glimmered in his eyes. He was watching, waiting. Together they could change the tide here. "I know the truth," she declared boldly, her voice echoing against the damp walls. "You cannot keep it from me or my son." With that, she thrust the key upward, and to everyone's astonishment, a crack of light burst open, illuminating the room with its blinding glow. The shadows writhed as the light surged across the space, engulfing the man in black. "No!" His scream pierced the air, shrill and filled with unbridled rage, as the darkness thinned around him, fracturing like glass. Sarah clasped Tommy's hand, pulling him close. Together they stepped into the light, a barrier between them and the approaching darkness. Everything began to warp and twist around them, as if reality itself was reconfiguring. The shadows lost their grip. As the blinding light dimmed, they found themselves standing outside the night air, fresh and cool, the blaring sounds of the bar lingering behind them as a distant hum. Did we do it?" Tommy looked up at her, disbelief sparkling in his eyes. "Yes, sweetheart." For now she sighed in relief, but the weight of what lay ahead remained. And although the man in black faded into legend, the truth was still thick in the air, waiting to be unraveled. "The darkness has many faces, Tommy," she said, kneeling beside him, "and we have to be ready to face whatever comes next together." They looked toward the horizon, where dawn began to touch the sky with a palette of warmth, a whispering promise of hope laced with uncertainty. In that moment, surrounded by the light, Sarah knew they had changed the game. They would uncover whatever secrets lay ahead, but they would do so on their own terms. Even shadows, after all, could not entirely extinguish the flame of truth. The journey wasn't over, and they were just beginning, tied together by courage, a key forged in love, and the whispers of a deeper bond that would always guide them. And as they turned to walk into a new day, the echoes of the night whispered, "This isn't the end. It's just the beginning now." If you found this conclusion thrilling, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. That will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, and let everyone know you're here for more. If you're excited, flood the comments section with your reactions and theories. Let's discuss what we just witnessed. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Let us keep this story alive.